Most people never question where they live. You are born somewhere. You grow up somewhere. And that somewhere becomes normal. But normal is just a word for what you're used to. Because somewhere on this planet, there are people for whom normal looks nothing like yours. Their normal would stop you in your tracks, would make you question everything you assumed about what a home is, what a street is, what a life looks like. And the most extraordinary thing, they are not extraordinary to themselves. It is just Tuesday. It is just home. It is just the only life they have ever known. 7 places, 7 Tuesdays that would change everything you think you know. Oymyakon, Russia. Your alarm goes off. You check your phone. -52. That's not a weather warning. That's Tuesday Oymyakon, a village of 500 people in the heart of Siberia, the coldest permanently inhabited place on Earth. The record temperature here, -67.7 degrees Celsius. Set in 1933, a temperature so cold that exposed skin freezes in under a minute. That metal sticks to bare hands. That saliva freezes before it hits the ground. That eyelashes frost over between the door and the car. The car that must run all night, because if the engine stops, it won't start again. The oil has frozen, the fuel has thickened, the battery has given up. There is no indoor plumbing here. The permafrost goes hundreds of meters deep. You cannot dig pipes through it. So the toilet is outside, at -52, every morning. The children go to school until -52. Below that, school is canceled. Not because of danger, because the buses cannot start. Food is meat and fat. Reindeer, horse, fish. Frozen solid and eaten raw or thawed slowly in your hands. Vegetables don't grow. The growing season is 90 days. The name Oymyakon means unfrozen water, a reference to a thermal spring nearby, the only warm thing for hundreds of kilometers. People have lived here for centuries. Reindeer herders who followed their animals. Then a settlement. Then a village. Then somehow, a place with a cafe, a school, a sign that reads, Oymyakon, Pole of Cold. As if that needed to be announced. Matera, Italy. In 1952, the Italian government was so ashamed of this city that they forcibly removed its entire population. 15,000 people evacuated by law because the Prime Minister called Matera the shame of Italy. Because 15,000 people were living in caves in the 20th century in one of the most developed countries in Europe. The caves of Matera, called the Sassi, have been inhabited for 9,000 years. 9,000 years. Longer than the pyramids of Egypt. Longer than the city of Rome. the oldest continuously inhabited settlement in Europe. People carved homes into the limestone ravines, layer after layer, generation after generation. What started as simple shelters became a complex city, built not up, but down, into the rock, into the hill. Churches carved from stone, streets carved from stone, cisterns to collect rainwater, ventilation channels, drainage systems, all carved by hand over 90 centuries. The people lived here with their animals. Donkeys and goats shared the lower rooms. The family lived above. Generations of the same family in the same cave for centuries. In 1952, the government emptied it, called it uninhabitable, built apartment blocks on the plateau above and moved everyone in. For 40 years, Matera was a ghost town. Empty caves, empty churches. Silence in a city that had never been silent in 9,000 years. Then, in 1993, UNESCO declared it a World Heritage Site. The shame of Italy became the pride of Italy. People began moving back. The caves became boutique hotels, design studios, restaurants with tables carved from the same stone as the walls. James Bond filmed here. The Passion of the Christ filmed here. Every major fashion house has shot campaigns here. In the caves that Italy was once ashamed of. Huacachina Oasis, Peru. There is a village in Peru surrounded on all sides by sand dunes 100 meters tall. Not rolling hills of sand, not a gentle desert, walls of sand. In every direction, rising higher than a 30-story building, cutting off everything beyond them. And in the middle of those walls, a lake, green and still, palm trees leaning over the water, boats tied to wooden docks, houses painted in warm colors, a bar with tables on the waterfront. Huacachina, a village of around 100 people, built around the only natural oasis in South America. The lake appeared because the water table here is very close to the surface. The groundwater seeps up into the sand, collecting in this natural depression, creating a body of water in the driest coastal desert on Earth. The Atacama, where some weather stations have never recorded rain, not in decades, not ever. And in this desert, a green lake, with palm trees and people living around it. The sand dunes that surround Huacachina are among the largest in South America. They shift constantly. Every year, the dunes move slightly, closing in, the desert reclaiming what the water took from it. The village has existed for centuries. Ancient Peruvians believe the lake was created by a princess who was bathing when a hunter startled her. She fled. The water from her bath became the lake. The ripples of her cloak became the dunes. At sunset, the dunes turn gold. The lake reflects the sky. The palm trees go still. A village of 100 people, surrounded by a desert that wants them gone. Still there. Chefchaouen Morocco. Every wall, every door, every staircase, every alley, every flower pot, every step. Blue. Not one shade of blue, every shade. Cobalt, turquoise, indigo, sky blue, navy, powder blue, pale blue that fades to white in the sun, deep blue that absorbs the light in the shadows. Chefchaouen, a city of 45,000 people in the Rif Mountains of northern Morocco. And nobody knows exactly why it is blue. There are theories. The Jewish refugees who arrived here in the 1930s fleeing persecution in Europe. They painted their homes blue. Blue is the color of the sky, of heaven, of the divine. A reminder to live a spiritual life. Or, the blue repels mosquitoes. The specific pigment used in the paint creates an environment mosquitoes avoid. Or, it simply started. One house painted blue, then a neighbor, then a street, then the whole Medina. Because it looked extraordinary, because it became identity. Because once a city is this beautiful, you don't stop. The city was founded in 1471, at the foot of two mountains, Jebel Ash-Shower and Jebel Tisuka. In a position so defensible that it was closed to non-Muslims and non-Jews for centuries. The first Westerner to enter and survive arrived in 1883, disguised. The streets here are not straight. They were never planned. They grew organically from the center outward, each alley leading somewhere that leads somewhere else that leads back to where you started. Getting lost here is not an accident. It is the point. At dawn, before the tourists arrive, the city is the color of the sky above it, indistinguishable. The walls and the heavens the same shade, as if the city climbed up to meet the sky. And decided to stay that color, forever. Faroe Islands, Gjógv village. The village has 49 people. 49. On a cliff above the North Atlantic, on an island that the rest of Europe mostly forgot existed. Gjógv. Pronounced like nothing you've ever tried to say before. A village on the northeastern tip of Eysturoy Island in the Faroe Islands. The houses have grass roofs, not decorative grass, living grass. That grows, that needs to be cut, that turns bright green in summer and fades to gray in winter. The grass roofs have been here for 1,000 years. They insulate, they waterproof. They blend the houses into the cliffs so completely that from a distance you cannot tell where the island ends and the village begins. The gorge that gives Gjógv its name, Gjógv means gorge in Faroes, is a natural harbor. A crack in the cliff face barely wide enough for a rowing boat. The boats are lifted in and out by crane because the sea is too rough for a harbor wall. In winter, Storms hit the Faroes for weeks at a time. Waves the height of buildings. Wind that makes walking a full-body activity. The ferry to the mainland canceled for days, sometimes weeks. "49 people on a cliff in a storm with grass on their roofs. And they don't leave. The Faroe Islands have one of the highest happiness indexes in Europe, despite, or because of, the wind, the isolation, the 49-person villages on the edge of cliffs above the North Atlantic. Because when you live somewhere this beautiful, this raw, this completely itself, the rest of the world seems like the strange place. La Rinconada, Peru. 5,100 meters above sea level. At this altitude, the air contains 40% less oxygen than at sea level. Your body works twice as hard to do half as much. Headaches are permanent, nosebleeds are normal. Altitude sickness is not an emergency. It is Tuesday. La Rinconada, the highest permanently inhabited city on Earth. 50,000 people in tin shacks on a frozen mountainside beneath a glacier in the Peruvian Andes. No running water, no sewage system, no hospital. Garbage piled in the streets because no truck can make it up the road. They came for gold? The glacier beneath the city sits on top of one of the richest gold deposits in South America. The mining system here is called Chefchaouen. Miners work for a company for 30 days without pay. On the 31st day, they are allowed to take whatever gold they can carry in their pockets. That one day. That is the entire salary for a month of work at 5,100 meters, in tin, in cold, in thin air. Most miners find almost nothing. Some find enough to survive. A few find enough to stay. At night, the temperature drops well below zero. The tin roofs frost over. 50,000 people sleep under them because the gold is here. And Hopper, it turns out, doesn't need oxygen. It just needs one lucky day in 31 attempts. Coober Pedy, Australia. 53 degrees Celsius. That is the surface temperature in Coober Pedy in summer. Not a record, not an extreme event. A Tuesday in January. So the town moved, not metaphorically, not partially. The entire town moved underground. Coober Pedy in the outback of South Australia produces 70% of the world's opals. It is why people came, why they stayed, and why, faced with 53 degrees on the surface, they dug down and built their lives inside the earth. Underground homes, called dugouts, carved directly into the sandstone hillsides by the same miners who came here in 1915 looking for opals. Underground hotels, underground restaurants, underground bars, underground churches, 3 of them. An underground art gallery, an underground bookshop, an underground golf course, played at night because the surface is uninhabitable by day. The dugouts maintain a constant temperature of 23 degrees year-round. No air conditioning, no heating. The rock does both, naturally, for free. Above ground, the landscape looks like Mars. Red dirt, no trees, thousands of holes where mines have been dug and abandoned. Warning signs everywhere. Watch your step. Not for traffic, for holes. 10 meters deep, unmarked, hidden by the dark. The population, around 1,700 people, from 45 different countries. All of them came for opals. All of them stayed for reasons they find difficult to explain. The silence, the red landscape, the underground life that is stranger and cooler and more comfortable than anything on the surface. Coober Pedy means white man in a hole in the local Aboriginal language, which is exactly what it is. A town of holes in a desert that doesn't care how hot it gets outside. Because outside is not where they live. 7 places. 7 different definitions of the word home. A village where the air freezes your words before you finish saying them. A city that hid underground for 2,000 years and was called a disgrace for it. An oasis surrounded by walls of sand that want to swallow it. A city that painted itself blue, and nobody knows exactly why. 49 people on a cliff in a permanent storm. A city of 50,000 where the salary is 1 day in 30. And a town that solved the problem of heat by moving underground. What all of them share is a choice. Nobody had to stay. Nobody is trapped. They chose these places. They chose these lives. And every one of them would choose the same again. Subscribe. Because this is just part 2. And there is no end to the ways humans find to call impossible places home. Where do you live? An apartment? A house? A street with a number? A city with a name? Now forget all of that. Because somewhere on this planet, right now, someone is walking out of their front door and stepping onto water. Not land, water. Someone else is climbing a ladder 40 meters into the air to reach their bedroom. Someone else has never needed a road, has never owned a car, has never needed to. And someone else lives inside a rock, not near a rock, inside one. These are not survival stories. These are not emergencies. These are homes, chosen, built, lived in for generations. 7 places, 7 answers to the question, what does it mean to call somewhere home? Kandovan, Iran. From a distance, it looks like a termite mound, or a hive, or something that was grown rather than built. hundreds of cone-shaped rocks, each one with a door, a window, a chimney, smoke rising from the top. These are not decorations. These are not tourist attractions. People live in them, have lived in them for 700 years. In homes carved from volcanic rock, from the inside out. Kandovan, in the East Azerbaijan province of Iran, a village built into a field of Karenga, volcanic rock formations created by the eruption of Mount Sahand 7,000 years ago. The lava cooled, the ash compressed. The rain and wind carved the softer stone into these cone shapes, each one slightly different, each one hollow at the core. And someone, 700 years ago, looked at these cones and thought, door here, window there, room inside. The homes have multiple floors, ground floor for animals, middle floors for living, upper floors for storage. All carved upward through the rock, connected by internal staircases cut from the stone itself. The rock regulates the temperature, cool in summer, warm in winter, no air conditioning needed, no heating system. The rock does both, as it has done for 700 years. The village is still inhabited, the same families, the same carved homes. Some have added modern doors, satellite dishes, electricity cables running up the outside of cones that were carved by hand 700 years ago. Old and new, stone and satellite. A village that solved the problem of temperature 7 centuries before air conditioning existed. By moving into a rock and calling it home. Giethoorn, Netherlands. There are no roads here. Not closed roads, not broken roads, no roads. Giethoorn, a village in the Overijssel province of the Netherlands, has no roads connecting its houses. Never has. The only way to move through this village is by water. By the 7 kilometers of canals that wind between the islands on which the houses sit. Flat-bottomed boats called punters, pushed by a pole, silent, no engine, no noise, just the sound of water and birdsong and the occasional voice from a garden. The village was founded in the 13th century by fugitives, people running from persecution who settled in a remote, marshy area that nobody else wanted. They dug peat for fuel. The peat digging created trenches. The trenches filled with water. The water became canals. The canals became the roads. And they never built actual roads, because they didn't need to. The canals worked. Today, Giethoorn has around 2,600 residents, all of them accessed by boat. The postman delivers by boat. The doctor visits by boat. Groceries arrive by boat. Guests come by boat. The bridges here, some 176 of them, are for pedestrians only. No vehicle has ever crossed them, because no vehicle has ever needed to. In summer, the canals fill with tourist boats, everyone moving slowly, everyone quiet, because the village requires it. No engines above a certain speed, no noise above a certain level. A rule enforced not by law, but by the village itself, by its canals, by its silence. Arrive here on a winter morning before the tourists, when the canals are still, when the thatched farmhouses reflect in the water, when the only sound is the water and the birds. And understand why someone who arrived here 700 years ago and found this marsh decided to stay and never build a road. Korowai tribe, Papua New Guinea. The ladder is 40 meters long. That is where the door is. 40 meters above the forest floor, above the roots, above the mud, above the insects and the animals and the other tribes that the Korowai have been hiding from for centuries. The Korowai people of the remote rainforest of southeastern Papua New Guinea build their homes in trees. Not small homes, full-size family homes. With multiple rooms, a cooking area, a sleeping area, storage, all 15 to 50 meters above the ground. Built from the tree itself, from the wood and bark and leaves of the tree that holds the house, the platform attached to the trunk, the walls woven from bark, the roof thatched with leaves. Everything from the tree, supported by the tree, 40 meters in the air. The Korowai had no confirmed contact with the outside world until 1974. Missionaries reached them and found a people who believed that outsiders were demons. Called Kakwa, who came in human form and had to be killed. Trust took decades and is still fragile. The tree houses exist for protection. From floods, the forest floods seasonally. From insects, from predators, from rival groups. At 40 meters, you are above almost all of these threats. The children climb from the moment they can walk. 40 meters, on a notched pole, barefoot, without falling, without thinking about it. The way other children cross a street. There are an estimated 4,000 Korowai people, most still living in tree houses, most still above 30 meters. The forest below them is exactly as it was 1,000 years ago, because they live above it and leave it alone. Bajau Sea Nomads, Philippines/Malaysia. They are born on the water. They live on the water. They die on the water. And the water has changed them. The Bajau people, called the Sea Nomads, have lived on and in the ocean off the coasts of the Philippines, Malaysia, and Indonesia for over 1,000 years. Some live on boats, some in stilt houses built directly over the sea. villages floating above coral reefs, walkways connecting house to house, over open water, the reef visible directly below through the gaps in the planks. The children swim before they walk. Some never learn to walk properly because they spend so much time in the water. The Bajau dive for food. Free dive, no tanks, no equipment. Holding their breath, down to 60 meters, for up to 13 minutes. That is not a normal human capacity. The world record for competitive freediving is around 24 minutes. The Bajau achieved 13 minutes while working, while hunting, while carrying spears. Science wanted to know how. In 2018, researchers discovered that the Bajau spleen is 50% larger than average. The spleen stores oxygenated blood cells. A larger spleen means a larger oxygen reserve. When the Bajau dive, their spleen contracts, releasing extra oxygenated blood, extending the dive. The ocean changed their organs. Over 1,000 years of diving, natural selection favored larger spleens. The Bajau evolved, specifically, for the sea. Some Bajau deliberately perforate their eardrums as children to improve pressure equalization during deep dives. They choose pain for the ability to go deeper. When Bajau people spend time on land, many describe feeling unwell, dizzy, uncomfortable. They call it land sickness, the opposite of seasickness, for people who are built for the water. Uros floating islands, Peru. The island beneath your feet is not land, it is reeds. Totora reeds. Layered 3 meters thick, floating on Lake Titicaca at 3,810 meters above sea level. And you are sinking, slowly, as you stand on it, the reeds compressing under your weight. The island is alive. It is rotting from the bottom. The lowest reeds decompose in the lake water. And so the Uros people, who have lived on these islands for over 500 years, add new reeds to the top, every single day, replacing what the water takes, building upward as the bottom dissolves. An island that must be constantly rebuilt just to stay afloat. There are 42 of these islands on Lake Titicaca near Puno, Peru, home to around 2,000 people, all floating, all made entirely of reeds. Not just the island. The houses, reeds. The boats, reeds. The watchtowers, reeds. The furniture, reeds. Even some of the food. The soft white core of the totora reed is eaten raw. A slightly sweet, starchy vegetable that grows directly beneath where they sleep. The Uros originally built floating islands to escape the Inca Empire, and before that, to escape the Aymara people. Islands that could be moved were islands that could not be found, or attacked, or taxed. When enemies came, they cut the anchor ropes and floated away. that option still exists. The islands are still anchored with ropes tied to poles driven into the lake bottom. Every island can be untied and moved in an afternoon. A civilization that solved the problem of being conquered by making its entire homeland mobile. Today, the Uros maintain their traditional life. They fish, they hunt birds, they make crafts from reeds. Some welcome tourists onto their islands. The tourists step onto the island and feel it flex under their feet. Feel the water below. Feel the island breathing. And understand what it means to build your home on something that is always moving. Ushguli, Georgia. In October, the road disappears, not closes, not becomes dangerous. Disappears, under snow, under meters of snow, until April. And the 200 people who live in Ushguli, the highest permanently inhabited village in Europe, are on their own. No supply trucks, no doctors, no emergency services, no way in, no way out. Everything they need for 6 months of winter must be stored before the first snowfall. Food, medicine, fuel, everything. Calculated precisely. Because if you miscalculate, there is no going to the shop. There is no ordering online. There is only what you have. And the snow. And the months. Ushguli sits at 2,200 meters in the Caucasus Mountains of Georgia. The Nguri River runs below it. The Shkara Glacier, the highest peak in Georgia, rises above it. Around the village, more than 200 stone towers, built between the 9th and 12th centuries by individual families as refugees during clan wars. Each family owned their own tower. When enemies came, the ladder came up, the doors sealed. The family waited inside, sometimes for weeks. The towers have no ground-level entrance. You entered from the second floor, by ladder, which you pulled up behind you. Today, those same towers still stand. The same families still own them, passed down through 30 generations. In summer, a dirt road connects Ushguli to the nearest town. 40 kilometers, 2 hours in a 4x4, impassable in rain. A child born in Ushguli in November may not leave the village until they are 6 months old. Not because no one wants to take them, because there is no way. The village has been continuously inhabited for over 1,000 years. Through every winter, every isolation, every 6 months of being entirely on their own. They stayed every time. Setenil de las Bodegas, Spain. The roof of this house is not tiles, not slate, not concrete. It is a cliff. A solid overhang of rock that has been the ceiling of this street for 500 years. That was here before the houses were built beneath it. That will be here long after. Setenil de las Bodegas, a small town in Andalusia, Spain, built directly into the gorge carved by the Tajo River. The river cut through soft rock over thousands of years, left overhangs, left caves, left protected ledges where the sun never quite reaches and the temperature stays constant. And people moved in, not into caves. They built proper houses. Whitewashed walls, wooden doors, flower pots, window boxes, all under a ceiling of solid rock that weighs thousands of tons above their heads. The rock keeps the houses cool in summer. The same rock that makes the summers brutal in the rest of Andalusia, 40 degrees in the shade. Here, the shade is permanent, built into the geology itself. There are two main streets running under the overhang. Calle Cuevas del Sol, Calle Cuevas de la Sombra. The Street of the Sun Caves, the Street of the Shadow Caves, named for which side of the rock the sun reaches. Restaurants operate under the overhang. Bars, shops. People eat lunch under a ceiling of stone, with a view down the gorge to the river below. The town has been here since before recorded history. The Romans were here. The Moors were here. The Spanish Reconquista tried to take it 7 times before they finally succeeded. Because a town built under a rock is very difficult to attack. The rock is the wall. The rock is the ceiling. The rock is the reason this town still exists. "500 years of living under something that could fall, and hasn't." 7 places. 7 different answers to the same question. Where do you live? On reeds floating above a lake. On the sea itself. In trees 40 meters above the ground. Inside a volcano's leftover rock. In canals instead of streets. Under a cliff that is your ceiling. In a village cut off from the world for half the year. What connects all of them is not the place, it's the decision. Someone looked at a reed lake and decided, here. Someone looked at a tree and decided, up there. Someone looked at a rock and decided, inside. Not by accident, not by necessity, by choice. The strangest homes on earth are strange only to those of us who chose differently. Subscribe, because there are more of these places than you can imagine.